All right, hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Star Wars Mark of Balance. My name is Mark, and I'm excited for today because not only did we get the Mandalorian Season 3 premiere, but this is also the first time I'm able to do week-to-week reviews and breakdowns of The Mandalorian since starting the podcast, which is kind of crazy to say because I feel like I've had it for a while, but I guess that just emphasizes how long it's been since we've got The Mandalorian. So excited to bring these to you every week, and I think I'll just jump right into it. This was a typical, but of course, very fun episode of Mandalorian. Didn't do anything new or out of the box, but I definitely appreciated that this feels like the first season of Mandalorian where we have a goal or a focus point that we're headed towards. The first season, of course, was just kind of getting its bearings. We were introduced to all these new characters, we had these new relationships, and the second season, it expanded the galaxy a lot more, introducing all these different cameos and widening the scope a little more. But this season, we definitely know we're going to be focused on Mandalore, the conflict between Mandalorians, warring factions, different ideologies about the culture of being a Mandalorian, and we have some huge hints for the future of Star Wars that I'm excited to talk about a little bit later. But again, overall, this was a pretty typical episode of Mandalorian, but that's not a bad thing because The Mandalorian is always a fun watch. Mando and Grogu are a great duo. Their chemistry, comedy, and the really lighthearted and frankly cute moments they have together really capture that Star Wars feeling, and I'm excited to have them back week to week. So for these reviews, I'm not going to do a play-by-play. I'll just talk about the big moments or the moments that really stuck out to me, give you my breakdown and thoughts on those. So unfortunately for all of you Monster of the Week fans, I'm not really going to be talking about the alligator turtle thing in the beginning, unfortunately, because that stuff doesn't really get me going. But I did appreciate the kind of misdirection where you thought that that was a flashback to Mando getting his helmet, but it was really current and he was there to save the day. So that was pretty cool. But really where I want to start is Mandalore and the central focus of the season being around these Mandalorians, which I really appreciate because I feel for the show Mandalorian, they haven't done as good of a job as Rebels or Clone Wars in really diving into that Mandalorian history and culture and backstory. I really love, of course, Clone Wars introducing it and diving into the political aspect of Mandalore and going against that warrior culture in favor of pacifism, and in the end it ends up destroying the planet, unfortunately. And then in Rebels, we see them kind of picking up the pieces, and Sabine being that tent pole that we hang on to throughout, and her backstory and her redemption in the end is just fantastic storytelling. And while I appreciate The Mandalorian for bringing this culture and this planet to a more broad audience, I haven't felt like it's dove in and really explained the culture as well as the other shows. And partially that's because there's so many different factions of Mandalorians right now. We have obviously this group of foundlings that aren't really born on Mandalore, but they take up the mantle and they take up the creed of the Mandalorian, and that isn't exactly the same as what they're doing on Mandalore with Bo-Katan, and she kind of represents that faction of what a Mandalorian is. So I do acknowledge that it has a difficult job in doing all these things, but I do want to save my judgment for the end of the season because, as I said, this is very focused on Mandalore and all of these different factions this season. So I think by the end, The Mandalorian will kind of cement itself as another great chapter in this whole lexicon of Mandalore that all these TV shows have built up over the years. And this tension between Bo-Katan and Din is going to be really interesting because we kind of felt it boiling up last season because he was the rightful owner of the Darksaber. And really, if you want to unite the people of Mandalore, you need to be holding the Darksaber. And because Bo-Katan didn't have it, we see that she ultimately failed. And now all of these different groups of Mandalorians, she even mentions like Death Watch, are all kind of split up and fractured. And you can feel that resentment from Bo-Katan towards Din because she wasn't able to accomplish her goal. And he kind of seems not apathetic to it, but he's not exactly like, oh, how can we unite Mandalore together? Because obviously they don't see eye to eye on the Mandalorian culture because she doesn't wear her helmet. He believes you have to wear your helmet. So ideological conflict. And then, of course, there's a personal conflict there. So it's very interesting that they've kind of set up this conflict and that Bo-Katan might be the main antagonistic force, even though we like Bo-Katan, we know where she's been, we know she's been through a lot, and she's been a protagonist in the past. We know that there's going to be some infighting here between Mandalorians, which will be really cool. So closing my thoughts out on the Mandalore aspect of this episode, excited that it's front and center, excited that we're going to be going to Mandalore to see the devastation, to see the after effects of this purge, and kind of this mystery surrounding the planet and this alleged curse. It's all very mystical, which you wouldn't really expect from Mandalore, so it'll be interesting what they do with that and what Mando's going to do when he finally gets there. But before he gets there, the one thing I do want to talk about, because it was a rather big portion of this episode, and it seems like it's going to be something that's going to carry into next week, and that's repairing IG-11. And I'm going to make a joke here that Disney just can't let any characters die, whether they're living characters or droid characters. They just can't help themselves. They always have to bring these characters back to life somehow, some way. And here's the case with IG-11. I loved his sacrifice in the first season. It was one of my favorite moments. And now it looks like he's going to be back. But I think there's a purpose for it, obviously. Mando might be hiding this kind of fear that he has, that he doesn't know what he's going to run into when he gets to Mandalore. Maybe this curse, maybe this poisoned landscape is true, and he needs a non-living companion. And he's literally the only droid that Mando trusts because of his childhood and what he witnessed with the droids that killed his family and he lost his home to them. So understand the motivation behind it, but I felt it dragged a little far in this episode, and it's unfortunate that we're kind of getting back into that routine of like a fetch quest where it's like, oh, we got to repair IG-88. Oh, well, this piece is broken. You need to go get this piece from another planet. Oh, okay, I'll go get another piece from the other planet. And I don't love that formulaic plot, so hopefully it doesn't take too many weeks to get there, but it'll be nice to have IG-11 back. I think there's a purpose to it, and I can't pass judgment off the premiere, just saying it was a little bit formulaic, but we'll see how it goes. I will say the best part about the whole IG-11 repair storyline was the Babu Frick mechanic shop. That was just hilarious, from the physical comedy of Din sitting in there crisscross applesauce in this small little workshop, and Grief kind of translating for him out the door, and just a bunch of Babu Fricks like giving him a hard time and just saying nonsense to each other. And then of course Grogu does a Grogu thing and tries to hug Babu Frick. Luckily he didn't try and eat him. That's a first for Grogu, so that was good. But I really liked the comedy in this scene, and Grogu was great in this episode. He was exactly what he's been. He's been a great comic relief character. He's been endearing. He's been just fun to watch, and I think all the comedy with him in this episode landed. He was spinning himself in the chair. He picks up Babu Frick. He takes a piece of candy. All this stuff was really just fun to watch, and I really enjoyed those cute little moments between him and Din here, because now they finally embraced each other. The first season, they were kind of strangers, and there was that unspoken bond. Same thing into season 2, and then at the end, they finally said, no, we want to be together. Obviously, they get back together in frickin' Book of Boba Fett, as I've already mentioned, a huge blunder, but here they're companions. They want to be together. They've embraced each other, so I really like those moments, like when they're flying through hyperspace and Grogu comes from the kind of watch port down to cuddle with Din, and Din kind of snuggles up with him, and that was a really cute moment. And then, of course, Din kind of teaching him how to fly, how to navigate space. And that leads me into the big foreshadowing portion of this episode, where we have the Purgle, which is huge for Rebels fans and for the Star Wars galaxy as a whole moving forward, and the storytelling that could be on the horizon, or is basically confirmed to be on the horizon. Now, this is hard to talk about without spoiling Rebels, but I do want to talk about this. Of course, if you haven't seen Rebels, I can't recommend it enough. I really encourage you to watch it. If you haven't already, it's going to give you so much backstory and information for the Ahsoka show coming up, for Mando that you're watching right now, and as I've mentioned, a lot of stories in the future are going to be kind of contingent on Rebels. And even Sabine had the Darksaber. She was a Mandalorian in Rebels, and she has great backstory, and she is going to be in the future of Star Wars. So all of that stuff is really screaming for you to go watch it. So I don't want to spoil Rebels, but I'm going to kind of spoil Rebels here to talk about this. But if you want to skip ahead a little. But essentially, we have the Purgle, and it shows that they're going to be exploring the unknown regions in the future, whether it's this season or next season, but it's definitely leaning towards Thrawn being the big bad in the unknown regions and Mando and Grogu essentially, going out there and joining the fight, whatever it is. And it shows that, Star Wars storytelling in the future is going to be focused in the unknown regions, kind of away from where we're used to, the familiar of the Skywalker saga, the galaxy we've come to know. And that's really exciting for me because that's what I've wanted them to do for a very long time. So I like that they dropped this hint here that, Ezra and all this stuff is coming in Ahsoka. I don't think Mando's going to be involved in that stuff right now, but I like that it's hinted at. And then, of course, they drop an even bigger hint when Mando's kind of talking to Grogu about how to navigate the galaxy. And he specifically calls out the hyperspace kind of monitor and how to read that. And, you don't want to get lost out here. You want to know where you're going in hyperspace. And a lot of talk about hyperspace. So we know that it's all roads are leading to Thrawn and Ezra in the unknown region, which is really, really exciting. And I'm happy that we finally got that confirmation. And I thought the Purgle looked really cool here. I mean, they're very weird looking in animation, so maybe they can make them look a little cooler in live action, but I really enjoyed how they did it here. So excited to see the Purgle and the unknown regions in the future and bring on some live action Thrawn. Oh, and I forgot to mention it, but I loved Grogu having his little chainmail under his robes. You could see his drip, his chains on under, blinging through when they did some close-ups. So that was nice to see. Again, if you didn't see Book of Boba Fett, you wouldn't know that. So I digress. But for the people that did, it was nice. Wish it was in Mando, but it wasn't. And I think my closing thoughts, I just want to talk about the action and the practical effects that were in this episode. I think first and foremost, I just want to give another shout out to all the practical effects. You can really feel that tangible and feel. It's the same word, Mark. Come on. You can really feel like you're in the galaxy far, far away, that it exists to some degree. I really like the prosthetics here with all the different alien species. The new one, the freaking swamp monster pirate guy, that was pretty cool. I don't know what they were going for there, but that was funny. And yeah, I think Cad Bane set a huge bar in Book of Boba Fett, and I think they kept the bar right there. I really like that they utilized these prosthetics and the makeup department to bring together these different aliens, and they had these speaking roles, and it looked great, I thought. And then you have, of course, the practical effects of the armor. You have Babu Frick's workshop. You have like the cutting of the armor, and there was just a lot of practical effects that I appreciated here, and it always makes Star Wars stand out because a lot of movies are moving away from that, and the practical effects here with Babu Frick and all this stuff is just great. So I love that they continue to push the boundaries of that and keep it front and center in Mando. And finally, the action was really cool. We had, of course, our Western showdown between Greef and the pirates, and Mando got involved as well. That was a nice little shootout, and I really, really enjoyed the asteroid dogfight. It obviously gave those Attack of the Clone feels where Obi-Wan's being chased by Jango Fett, but I like that in this aspect it was not being hunted by the bad guys. It was the good guy hunting the bad guys. It was reversed. I really liked how there was these explosions behind asteroids, and it was like, oh my gosh, wait, what happened to him? And then before you know it, another one gets shot down, and then the ship kind of flies by like a shadow, and then he ends up behind them. That was all really cool. I like the reveal when they were like, oh, I was actually leading you to the big ship, and then Mando's like, all right, peace, I'm through, and go right by him. And I like the line that he kind of was like a dad, where he said, yeah, next rule of the galaxy, don't trust pirates. We're out of here. So I thought that action sequence was fantastic, creative, and for TV, the visuals are just incredible. So I wanted to call that out as well. So those are my overall thoughts on the episode. It was a fun but typical adventure, but I did enjoy that there was a focus of the episode. It seems like the whole season has a vision that I like that previous seasons didn't have, and I like that we're going to be moving in that more focused direction. While I have some gripes about the whole IG-11 storyline, I want to see where it goes. I want to see where the purpose is there, and what is waiting for us on Mandalore. It was great to be back with Mando and Grogu. The chemistry's still there. Mando is still so cool. Bo-Katan and him having this tension is going to be great to explore. The warring factions or the fractured kind of nature of Mandalore and its clans right now are going to be really interesting to kind of explore, and I'm sure that'll have some good action and also some really good character moments that we can dive into. And yeah, so the premiere did what it needed to do. It got me excited to see what's next. It entertained me now. And as I said in the beginning, I'm excited to bring you these reviews for Mandalorian week to week. I haven't been able to do that while I've had the podcast. And while I loved Andor with all my heart, those reviews week to week were a little bit more difficult to pull together because those episodes were so dense, and it just required more time to kind of think through my thoughts for those episodes. And with Mandalorian, it's a little bit more easygoing. I can kind of come on here and just have a casual little conversation with you guys about what I thought about these episodes. And again, I'm not taking away anything from Mandalorian. This isn't like a backhanded compliment. It's just a different type of show than Andor. And again, as we've talked about, we need shows like Mandalorian. We need shows like Andor. Mandalorian gives us that childlike, whimsical feeling of Star Wars, and Andor gave us that realistic, grounded feel to the Star Wars galaxy and put it under a microscope with a real-world lens. So that about wraps up my thoughts. Thank you guys so much again for listening. If you want more content like this, follow me on Instagram at @star_wars_mark of balance. Really appreciate all the support. Hit the notification button or the follow button on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, wherever you get this podcast. Gives you notifications when the new episodes drop. Sometimes they're on Tuesdays, sometimes they're on Thursdays. We just go with the flow. This one will be on a Friday. I mean, that's just what it is around here. But thank you guys again. As always, stay safe, stay healthy, and may the Force be with you. Peace.